You feeling stuck lately? Like life's passing you by? Get to know M.A.Y.A.
Acronym My Ambition, Your Ambition.
Reconnect with your dreams, your goals, your ambitions. Find your motivation and start to live the life you desire. Explore the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast at MAYAAkai.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to episode 44 of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. Glad to have you here. As you know, I like to say that M.A.Y.A is a type of podcast, it's live, but podcasting, that likes to take the conversation about mental wellness, which is not mental illness, and normalize it and get people used to the idea of how important it is to give your mental wellness as much attention as you give anything else in your life. So with that being said, I like to think that I approached this topic from a very forward-thinking and fresh perspective. The key thing is about pulling back that veil of self-doubt and self-sabotage that plagues so many of us and keeps us from getting to that best version of ourselves every day. Remember, the conversation I'm having in 2021 is we're not talking lofty conversations about being that best version of you or this overarching idea of happiness. We're talking about achieving that every single day. So, if you happen to be a first-time listener, well, welcome aboard, or viewer. Buckle up for safety, not because this isn't a safe space, but maybe occasionally I might say something that might make the ride unexpectedly bumpy. I may jar a memory or an emotion that you just really hadn't thought about, and it puts something on your mind. That's what M.A.Y.A is all about. Doing the hard work to improve our lives. And of course, if you're a returning listener or a viewer, then you pretty much know the routine, business as usual, which means grab a pencil and paper. Maybe you'll jot down something. I may say something that just really makes you think and you want to go back and reflect on. Of course, grab your beverage of choice. I am choosing to hydrate. I'm doing water. With it being summer and me just trying to get right back on track with being healthier in my lifestyle, I'm trying to consume more water. So for me, it's water, but for you, it may be coffee, tea. It's 5 o'clock someplace, so it might be a glass of wine, whatever the case may be. You know, I've got listeners who listen in Hawaii, Morocco, Canada, Istanbul, all over the place. So there's time zones all over the place. So whatever you want to do, grab your beverage of choice to join to the show. Remember, there's a rule about M.A.Y.A that we have here, that you work at your own pace to discover, what you're working through. So even though this is episode 44, just know that I'm perfectly okay with the idea if you're back on episode 30, because that's the one where you're doing the work. It's okay. That's the rule. You work with the podcast at your pace. But for any reason, if you dislike tuning in every Thursday, usually at 2 p.m., I pushed it back to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, I'm always happy to have you aboard. Remember, you can always join the conversation by adding comments, whether you're viewing on Facebook or YouTube. Just put in the comment section and I can share it with our viewers. I'll put it on the screen and I'll read it. So if you happen just to be listening to the show, you can hear what someone brilliantly maybe shared with a listening audience, or an experience that you want to share, you think it's key. Let's do our housekeeping things before we jump into episode 44. Of course, you can listen to episodes of M.A.Y.A at MAYAAkai.com. Remember, with every episode, there's going to be a podcast companion. So some additional information that I think can make the podcast even better for you and give it more deeper meaning. So just go to MAYAAkai.com, click on the podcast resource tab, and go down to episode 44. And there's a couple resources I have there for you. Hopefully by now you have subscribed to my YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, search M.A.Y.A Kai. You're going to see a whole bunch of Japanese anime, and boom, there's M.A.Y.A. Subscribe, like, and share, of course. But if you happen to have a podcast platform of choice, I will not hold it against you because you're still enjoying and sharing the show, which works for me. You can always find episodes of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audibles, Spotify. It's everywhere. Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. Hopefully by now as well, you have gotten social with me. You follow me on Instagram and Twitter at M.A.Y.A_Akai, and Facebook, M.A.Y.A Akai Presents. So those are all the key ways that you can get involved with the show and participate in all those good things. Let's go ahead and do what we always do. So if you're new to the show, we open up our toolbox, because what we work on here on M.A.Y.A is creating this toolbox of useful things that you can employ when maybe you're in challenging or difficult situations to help you navigate the waters. One of the things that we subscribe to here is that we want you to learn how to respond to things opposed to react to things. And that's a big thing we work on in our toolbox. So we have everything from learning how to be objective, how to respond, open-mindedness. There's so many things we put in the toolbox every single week. But the key thing that we always talk about, the big one, is emotional intelligence. And if you are not new, then you know emotional intelligence, aka EI, refers to the ability to perceive, control, and evaluate emotions, not just yours, but others as well. Because when you have succinct EI, so to speak, when you have better EI, and we're all humans, we're not always going to respond appropriately all the time. But the goal of M.A.Y.A is to help us do better at it. I'm still working at it every day, and I'm a counselor telling you that. It's work. It's practice. And you get better at EI the more you start to employ it and become more conscious of it. So just know, every single episode we take out our EI, which actually your EI should be out all day long. It should have been out before you tuned into the show. But more importantly, if it wasn't, now it is. And you only put your EI away when you go to bed at night. That's the only time you're allowed not to have your emotional intelligence front and center. Okay? So that's our kind of unofficial, not really toolbox one, but it's something we always start the show with that's important. I also have decided that this is going to be the saying that I'm going to use for the rest of the year, because it aligns itself with what M.A.Y.A, my ambition, your ambition, is all about. Knowing yourself is the beginning of wisdom, as said by Greek philosopher Aristotle. And this is what M.A.Y.A is all about. It's that 60 minutes of time that's you and me time, carving out time for yourself. Something that most people legitimately struggle to do is to find time for themselves. They can find time for everything else in their lives, but to find the time to do the work on themselves, to give themselves that space, a lot of people are not willing to do it. They can always find an excuse for why they don't. But just know, based on the wisdom of Aristotle and so many more before him and after, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdoms. Because at the core of the most important relationship you have, it is you. Because when you are in touch with yourself and understand your wants, your needs, your desires, you tend to have more fulfilling relationships with others. So I decided that this is going to be the saying that's going to permeate through every single episode for the rest of the year, because I think people have to really begin to embrace the idea of mental wellness. It's not mental illness. Think about the idea of when Marshawn Lynch, he was a retired football player who played for the Seattle Seahawks. He said something, but I quote it all the time, but I get a kick out of it. He's like, you got to work on your mentals, your chicken. It makes sense. But the first thing he said in his list of things to focus on to achieve your goals and happiness is your mentals, your mental wellness. So it's a known fact. And the thing is, we watch people fall apart. We saw what happened with Naomi Osaka having to pull out the French Open. And now you hear others coming to her to say, this is a real deal. Anxiety, depression is difficult. And when you're in the public eye, it's even more so. Not as much. You are your public eye. So whatever your issues are, if you choose to look them in the face before you allow them to take over, it can totally change the trajectory of your life. And that is what M.A.Y.A is all about. So let's jump into episode 44, the complexity of being accomplished, but feeling unfulfilled. Now, I know someone's probably saying, how can this possibly be? How can that be the case? Well, this topic actually came from a new segment that I'm going to be creating on the show called M.A.Y.A's Mailbag. M.A.Y.A's Mailbag, just remember that. And the whole purpose of M.A.Y.A's Mailbag is that you listen to an episode, it makes you think about something, and you're saying to yourself, you know something? I would really like to explore this in deeper detail with someone. I would really like to I listened to this episode. It really it prompted some thoughts. I've got some questions. Hey, but I don't necessarily have a therapist and I'm not really ready to do that yet. Oh, wait, guess what? Now there's M.A.Y.A's Mailbag where you can listen to an episode and just shoot me an email at getinspired@mayakai.com and just pretty much say, hey, I was listening to episode, 35, and I have this question that I'm really pondering. Can you explore this with me? I may explore it back in the email, or it might be worthy enough of having an episode dedicated to it. So new segment, send a virtual letter to M.A.Y.A's Mailbag. So if an episode has got you thinking, reflecting on how to navigate a difficult situation, or if you feel stuck with working on getting to the best version of yourself, go ahead and shoot me a virtual letter, an email at getinspired@mayakai.com. And like I said, I'll reply, and or it just might turn into being something that's worthy of having a full episode dedicated, like this one we have this week, the very first one. So in this particular mailbag, the one letter that was in there that I reached into and pulled out. Dear Miss Accomplished but not feeling fulfilled. Because this is what the letter was really about, or the email that she sent to me. So let me share with you the kind of core of what was in the letter, and then we'll kind of break out and talk about the show. So here's what the letter read. Maya, I've listened to most episodes, and honestly, I've found value in each of them. Episode 26, Finding Your Purpose and Passion, and episode 14, Where Your Focus Goes, Your Energy Follows. These two episodes made me reflect on my current path in life. I have really begun to question my passion and purpose, despite being professionally and relatively accomplished. So, this particular virtual letter email from Maya's mailbag is questioning, like, I feel accomplished, but why don't I feel fulfilled? What's going on? Because most people assume, mind you, the word accomplish equates to success. So the general thought pattern with success is that you are fulfilled. But how many people have you met that say, though I'm successful, I've made the money, I've got the house, I've got the car, I've got this, I still feel like something's missing. I'm just not quite there. I don't feel like I'm really living up to my expectations or my dreams or my goals. Something's missing for me, though despite what might be the status quo for success, I've made it. I'm at the mountaintop. I'm doing it. But why am I not satisfied, or why do I not feel fulfilled? And a lot of people never stop to ask themselves that question. So this is why I felt that the very first new segment, Maya's Mailbag, where you can, like I said, go ahead, you can shoot me a virtual letter by sending it to getinspired@mayakai.com. I'll reply. But if it's a worthy kind of conversation, I'm not obviously going to disclose who you are, but I'm going to share it and make it a segment for the show, because your feedback is really what drives the show, besides things that kind of pop in my mind from episode to episode. There's always a podcast thread, so to speak. So there's a few things that we have to reflect on in this virtual letter, aka VL. And the episode she referred back to, episode 26 and 14, kind of talked about passion and purpose and where your focus goes, your energy follows kind of thing. So let's revisit the idea or conversation about purpose. It's interesting because purpose exists in two dynamics, and most people don't think about it. Of course, I think about it because I'm a counselor. So I'm always reflecting on it, not just with my clients I work with, but I reflected on me. I'm a daily project. I am so proud of how much time I invest in growth. And it's been difficult. I've had some things that have legitimately, emotionally and mentally have challenged me coming into 2021. And I'm not talking COVID. Seriously. I had those legitimate come to realization moments about some things and some choices I had made that just at the end weren't best from our overall emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, professional, social, the whole gamut well-being. Seriously. And I took full ownership of learning the pattern of behavior that I was exhibiting that was creating my issue. And this is a question that I frequently ask myself. Am I living to my purpose? Am I living with passion? And I'm a very passionate person, but we'll get into that in a bit. Purpose exists really in two dimensions, even though they're very, very intertwined. But I think when you start to deconstruct things and you pull it apart, you tend to see more of the nuances that exist with them. So you can talk about purpose as an idea, a noun. So a purpose, by its literal meaning, if you were to look it up, stealing it right there from Webster's dictionary online, the reason for which something is done or created for which it exists. So a purpose can simply be as you schedule a meeting to discuss a situation. It could be a family meeting. It could be a meeting at work. Purpose is pretty straightforward. It's a reason for which something is done or created for which something exists. So your purpose may be, some people say, I want to be a nurse because I really want to help people within the capacity with their health. Very clear purpose. The idea is help people. Now, when you talk about the idea of purpose being action-oriented, hence a verb, because if you look up anything online with Merriam-Webster's dictionary, it's going to give you noun and verb, and people probably don't pay attention to how that is a nuance that you should really look at. When you talk about purpose from a verbal standpoint, like an action, having intention or objective. So you want to be a nurse, but are your actions following the things that are going to make you able to do that, or whatever, a lawyer, a veterinarian, a secretary, I don't care what it is. Does your actions align itself with the actual, when we say the reason you chose to do something? So when you think about purpose, I want you to start thinking of it in that context, the noun and the verb. So I have this reason for which I want to do something. I want to create something, exist. But are my actions purposeful? It's important, because if the idea is there, but the action doesn't follow, the purpose is kind of pointless, to be honest. And you have a lot of people who function with an idea, but don't follow up with action. On the flip side, you got people doing a whole bunch of stuff and don't know why they're doing it. But you see, when you look at it from a noun and a verb, and I know I'm being so literal, but you know me, by now, I'm a little literal. I can't help myself. When you do is, I got this idea, and here is the action plan that follows it so that it can happen. That's when purpose becomes manifested in your life. I don't think that's an epiphany, but I think it's worthy of thinking about. And I'm going to tell you something. I've been haggling over this. I'm trying to get my act together because I always have way too many fires in the iron. I always say I have life ADD. I'm always doing something. I really love working with young people in the capacity of life choices and career in college. And one of the projects I had put together like more than 7 years ago was to actually do mentoring programs with young adults, because we have to shift the idea of thinking of them as children, with young adults right before they go to college, to kind of start to prepare them for, here's some things you might want to be aware of. Kind of prepare them, because what life was like in high school is going to be different in college. Everything from career choices to social interactions to the fear of this new adventure of being alone, which you wanted, but now you miss your parents, but you don't want to admit it. I've been working on some seminars that I'm going to launch, and even roll that seminar. I call it into my college mentoring coaching program, where for at least the first 6 months of a freshman being in college, we connect on a weekly basis to kind of work through how they're doing. So they have this support network. It doesn't mean they don't love their parents, but if they're trying to work on independence, it's something they would pursue. It's a passion that I have. I think it's so important to help young adults to have the information that often we as young adults didn't have, and kind of meandered our way through things. So it's a project I'm working on and hoping I'm going to get it launched by July and make it happen. But what's interesting about purpose and passion is often people have this bad habit of wanting to make the idea of purpose seem very clandestine. So you'll hear people say things like God's plan. That's spiritual, it's a religious kind of perspective. God's plan. This is God's plan for me, And I'm not saying this to make people like, don't get mad at me when I say this. I was like, how do you know that's God's plan for you? Did you get that in writing? Like, what is the motivation? Like, what's the action? What's the sign? That's all I'm saying. Tell me where you got that from, and let's make it really like tangible. Then you got people who kind of talk about the master plan. I haven't sang in a while, right? EPMD, right? So many songs run through my head all the time, which is kind of more of a spiritual, universal idea of what your purpose might be. But at the bottom of whether it's the God's plan or it's the master plan, the question usually is, and it's a nagging question, by the way, is why am I here? We don't really start to ask ourselves that question maybe until we get well out of our 20s. Or, depending upon what has happened in your life, that question could be posed a lot earlier. I'll be honest. Often people that are riddled with trauma or uncertainty or didn't have stability tend to kind of feel like they're not asking the question like, what am I here for? What's my purpose? They're actually saying to themselves, why am I even here? Same question, different meaning. Different meaning. So if you're asking yourself, why am I here, because you don't know your purpose and you want to explore it, that's one thing. I have a stronger sense of concern if I hear, why am I even here? I'm not even worth the space, the breath. That's a different question, which requires a whole different set of kind of tactics to approach it. And that's got therapy behind it and work. Because trauma is very heavy and serious, especially in a lot of minority communities. We have normalized trauma, and I've said that repeatedly through other episodes, that we just think certain things are acceptable and they're not. And I think little by little, that narrative is starting to creep up socially. Like, wait a minute, I don't have to keep doing this. As we stand on the idea that Juneteenth is now actually going to be a national holiday. Now think about how long it took for that to happen. Arrived here in 1695, slavery ends in 1895. And then guess what? We're only out of segregation for roughly 57 years. And finally, the official first date, June 19th in Texas, when slavery was actually literally not legal anymore, is being acknowledged as a national holiday. If you think about it, it's kind of crazy that That's a holiday. That's a holiday after Martin Luther King Day. Shouldn't Juneteenth have always been a holiday? And I think the reason that so many Black people never really embraced it because we felt it was so minimalized, but we should have never felt that way. Big moments in society as we are growing. There's a lot of people growing and expanding their knowledge and exploring their purpose. Like, I know I'm meant to be here and I'm meant to do here something amazing. And that amazing might be amazing for you, not for somebody else, by the way. We always talk about doing things within that context that are good for you and not for other people all the time. So just think about, if you're asking yourself that question about your purpose, are you asking it's God's plan? Like, God's plan for me? And I'm like, if it's God's plan for you, can you write it down and tell me exactly what that blueprint looks like and how you got that information and why you think that? And I'm not saying it because I want you to question your religious or spirituality. I just want you to have direction so that noun we talked about, the reason for something being done or created, how do we put the action behind God's plan? Or if it's the master plan, you feel like you're drawn to something. Why are you drawn to it? I'm going to scrutinize that too. Tell me why. You got the reason. So how can we make it action oriented so it becomes action oriented purpose, not just purpose in the constructs of your mind or maybe even in your heart? Just something to think about. Let's have a real talk time. I think we got like 2 in the show. I try to like narrow it down a bit. And this is something, when the real talk time is for you to have this internal conversation with yourself. We had a whole episode about self-talk. So these kind of questions, when I pose them in the real talk sections, is for you to have real talk time with you, because the best conversation you should ever have should be with you, whether you think that or not. Do you honestly feel you know and are living your purpose and or / with passion? A lot of people may be living their purpose, but there's no passion behind it, which often the meaning gets lost in translation when passion is missing. Because people don't often stop to think about what passion really is. So passion, aka, if you go Google it or go to Webster's Dictionary online, is an intense desire or enthusiasm for something. So I'll give you an example of how something was maybe not necessarily my initial passion, but because I was exposed to it. So anyone who knows me, and you, if you know me personally, you know this, I absolutely have an affinity for music, but I love dance. I've always hated the fact that I really can't play an instrument, because I'm like, wow, as much as I love music, I would have loved to been more musically inclined. And it's interesting because when I requested to play a certain instrument that wasn't the actual interest of my parent, it was kind of shut down because it wasn't the instrument they wanted. And I kind of regret that, because I still have a strong desire to learn how to play the guitar. They wanted me to play piano, which I wasn't interested in. I wanted to play guitar, and I was accused of only wanting to play the guitar because of how much I love Prince. Okay, so he was a motivator. But here I am, almost 50, and I still want to learn how to play the guitar. It was an interest that I had. And I'm actually going to learn. I'm going to, do an online class, buy a guitar, and learn at my own pace. I'm obviously not going to be the front for anybody's band, but it's just something I've always wanted to learn. But something I was exposed to as a child was dance. And initially, it wasn't something I was interested in. It was my mother's thing. And so she threw me in dance, ballet, jazz, tap, the whole 9 yards. And I enjoyed it as a kid, but I wasn't like, oh, I'm so passionate about it. I did it for like 8 or 9 years. And then eventually I stopped. And I probably would have continued more with it through high school had it not been the high school I went to. Unfortunately, was very racist. And I really wanted to be on their pom squad, which was a nationally ranked squad. They would not allow a Black girl to be on it. There was a girl I went to school with who was same thing as me. We are formally trained dancers. She was good enough to be in an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, White Heat, as an extra, as a dancer. But we weren't good enough to be on our high school pom squad because of racism. That kind of killjoyed me for a bit and kind of pulled me away from it. And it bothered me. When I went to college, I took a couple classes, but for me, then dance just turned in when I go out, you put on music, I dance. I dance in my living room by myself. It's a passion for me. So passion is something about an intense desire or enthusiasm for something. And for me, dance is something I enjoy. So before we closed down because of COVID-19, I would go out, salsa dancing because I'm all about it. I would go by myself. I didn't have a partner. Didn't matter. I didn't need one. I got there. I got one. So for me, dance is a passion that I have. It's a sense of release, and it's very therapeutic to me, as music is. So remember, your purpose and passion, it's so close that they can be aligned, because you hear a lot of people who will say, I love making money, but I hate my job. The purpose is to make money, but there's no passion, which means going to their job every day sometimes seems really tedious. So this is why these two things, when they're in concert with each other, makes for a richer life. And most people tend to miss that. So just remember, when you're exploring the idea of passion and purpose, The first thing I want you to think about with purpose is the noun we talked about and then the verb. You got the idea, the reason for something, but are you doing things that align with it that can make it happen, that can bring it to fruition? And then when you do it, the next question turns into, is it something you truly desire to do? And ask yourself a question. When something becomes a purpose for you, why is it actually a purpose for you? And a lot of people don't want to ask that question. Welcome to the show, Vernon Fairley. I love how you follow me from show to show. That makes me feel really special. Did those cats dance with you, though? My cats tend to move around the room. They're not quite acclimated yet. My older cat, who passed away last year, was I could pick him up and I could dance with him, and he liked it. These ones over here are a little skittish, so we haven't grown into the dance yet. But yes, cat dancing is always a good thing. Anyways, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you putting your comment. Just like Vernon, you got something you want to say, type it into the comment section, and I can share it on the screen, and I'll read it so our listeners, along with our viewers, can be part of the conversation. All right, so we had our real talk time. I want you to reflect on this. We talked about self-talk. Add this into your self-talk. Do you honestly feel you know and are living your purpose and or with passion or not with passion? So you feel you're really living a purpose. So whether you're working on the God's plan or you're working on the master plan, whichever one it is, do you feel like you're actually doing it? It's not just an idea, but you're action oriented and you're doing it with passion, which becomes that underlayer of the conversation, which is so, so important. Okay. We're halfway through the show. It happened so quickly. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to jump into keep going with the mailbag question. It's a new segment, Maya's Mailbag, where someone can send their question about an episode to getinspired@mayakai.com, and I'll reply to the email. But if it's worthy of an episode, as this one is, which the question was, it's termed, I called her, misaccomplished, yet she's not fulfilled. So the question that existed for her is, why am I accomplished, but I don't feel fulfilled? This makes no sense. Success is interesting. Success has an underbelly, and nobody ever thinks that. This is episode 44 of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. The complexity of being accomplished, but feeling unfulfilled. It's something that people often don't explore and think about, but it's definitely worthy of conversation. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and the conversation will continue, everybody. I'll be right back.
Please stop and listen, because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580-7183. Do not delay. Act today, because time is of the essence. That's 773-580-7183. 773-580-7183.
Stepping out of bed. It's easy to take for granted. You work, eat, play, sleep, and get out of bed the next morning. Seems simple. But if you're one of 25 million individuals in the United States living with major depression, sleep isn't always so easy. Neither is navigating your daily life free of guilt or hopelessness, or having the ability to enjoy time out with friends, make simple decisions, enjoy hobbies, or go to work. Major depression is the leading cause of disability across the United States, and without treatment, the frequency and severity of symptoms tend to increase over time. However, there is hope. Major depression is treatable, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Today, there are a variety of treatment options to choose from. The key is to get an evaluation and find a treatment plan that is right for you. Free education, information, and support programs are available. You are not alone. We can help.
When we come together, we bring the magic. When we stand together, we cannot be moved. We move and move. When we work together, we are a force. When we show up together, we show out. And when we band together, we are unstoppable. Join Cricket Nation in celebrating Black Music Month by supporting HBCU music programs.
Whether you're on the go or listening on your cell phone, tablet, or laptop, you can find the show in the iTunes, Google, and iHeartRadio platforms.
With all due respect, I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and get ready to be inspired and motivated to harness your ambition.
Welcome back to M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. I kind of love that shameless plug right there, which is so not my personality, but for some reason I get a kick out of it every time. All right, so we are talking about the complexity of being accomplished and yet feeling unfulfilled in episode 44, which is tied to a new segment that I've created, Maya's Mailbag, because people will kind of, send me a message on Facebook and say, hey, I got a question about this episode. And I used to kind of do small podcasts on it, but I decided, you know what? Sometimes a person might pose a question that is really worthy of making it a full episode. So if indeed you are listening to an episode and you've got questions, you can always drop me a virtual letter in the Maya mailbag. Email getinspired@mayakai.com 24/7. You know what? And I will read through it, reply, and say, I think this is worthy of actually an episode. And I feel like this one is too, because a lot of people often feel this way. They just feel like they're not living with purpose or passion, but yet they're not destitute or in despair, maybe financially. And they're like, well, I'm doing this, but why is there not a connection? I thought once I did this, I'd be in a much better place. So like I said, if you're in an episode and it sparks a question or something that you think is interesting, go ahead and send me a virtual letter at getinspired@mayakai.com. All right. So in this new segment, it is Maya's Mailbag. Dear Miss Accomplished but not feeling fulfilled. That's what this is about in this particular episode, because there is a complexity and an underbelly to success that most people never stop to consider. Let's have a real toolbox time, not the first one where I always tell you, take your EI out and put it on the table. What do you need purpose or passion for? And it's interesting because a lot of people will be like, well, I kind of go through my daily life and I don't know that I've got it zeroed in on being passionate or purposeful about anything. And then, you know what? Sometimes we do tend to go through the motions, but it doesn't mean it's absent. It means maybe you're just on autopilot with how you function in doing things. But I will tell you this, when we talk about things that need to be in your toolbox, everything you invest your focus, time, energy into should, one, have value, should yield some form of happiness, fulfillment, or pleasure. I mean that. If you're doing something and it has no value, and I mean everything from relationships, whether they be friendships, whether it be romantic relationships, work relationships, things should have value to you. They should have meaning. If you are investing your time and energy in something and you feel it is not yielding you happiness or fulfillment or pleasure, it's probably because that relationship doesn't have the value that it should. It either means that you're putting too much value into it and they're not giving value back to you. Value has to have equilibrium in relationship dynamics. Real talk. So if I'm valuing you, but you're not valuing me back, AKA reciprocity, you got to ask yourself, why do I keep going through this motion? Why am I valuing this so much when, one, I'm not really all that happy? And some relationships we're stuck in, like you got kids and maybe you're not happy with what they're doing with their lives. Doesn't mean it has to be all encompassing for you, because especially if they're adults, some people can't get past the idea their children are no longer children, but they're adults and can't let them go forth into the world and live. They're still so like hands in the pot that it makes them miserable. But if you're doing something that isn't making you happy, it doesn't make you fulfilled, or at least you don't get some small amount of pleasure from it, you need to evaluate why you're doing it and what's the purpose behind it. See, there goes that link there. What's the purpose behind me facilitating, continually kind of massaging this relationship that clearly is not even remotely advantageous for me? And not everything has to be fully advantageous for you, but there should still be some benefit to some degree. Rather just makes you happy that you did it. I'm okay with that. So a big thing in your toolbox, seriously, is that self-evaluation piece is this tool. Is that, am I doing things that have value? Is this purpose really rooted in value? What does it yield? Now, there's varying degrees, by the way, to purpose. Let me just say this. Passion is the thing that drives you more or less. So passion is the driver kind of in the purpose car. All right? Just know that. On the flip side, purpose is more of the direction that kind of helps the narrative and the trip to flow along. Imagine having a journey without an idea of where you want to go or how you're going to get there. Now, some people like, you're a wanderer. There's songs written about this. Papa was a Rolling Stone. I'm a wanderer. Okay, that's okay sometimes. But you often find that people who are in that situation all the time will either get to some destination and will ask that question, how did I get here? Talking Heads, I'm on the road to nowhere. And why in God's name am I here? Because they were doing things without intention or purpose. Or they were following other people, so hence still doing things without intention and purpose. The only intention you had was to follow. Didn't mean you cared about where you were going. So passion is what drives you, so to speak. But honestly, purpose, it's part of what helps your life narrative to fall out. It gives you direction. So, initially it may seem okay to not truly understand your purpose or your passion, but eventually the question will arise itself, like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? And I'm not even okay with it. We all been guilty of investing time and energy in things that weren't necessarily the best choice for us. The question is, when do you stop the madness? Because that's what it gets into, is madness. If you feel your purpose or passion in whatever area of your life is missing, right today, let's put an APB out on it. Passion, purpose. I lost you. I don't know where you are. Or AKA, I'm out here and I think I see something that's supposed to belong to me called purpose, but I'm not exactly sure. Let's put an APB out for it. So then we know already, we're acknowledging that it's missing or it's not where it should be so that we can bring it back home. That's really the key thing that a lot of people don't get, is they always manage to ask the question when they're in dire straits. I'm trying to get people to rethink their mindsets about mental wellness. It's not mental illness. Mental wellness impacts every single one of us every single day. You wake up knowing you on the right side of the bed, or you wake up knowing you're dead on the wrong side of the bed. And you can either choose to try to right this ship before you just kind of proceed through your day, or you can just let it sit where it is because you just have a day where you feel like not feeling it. It's okay. Every day is not going to be, I'll make it a great day. I love when people say, make it great. Yeah, okay, maybe. Sure. It depends on your mood for the day. But I think it's important to know when you wake up how you feeling about it. Seriously. Absolutely. Feel free to join the conversation. You can type something into the comment section on Facebook, or you can do it on YouTube, and I will share it. Thank you, Michael Carson, for tuning in. Michael shares in the conversation, do you recommend creating a fluid mission statement for your life? I like this. / mission purpose statement. Yes. I think it's a great idea. What's interesting about bringing ideas and goals into existence is really beginning to flesh them out. And partially how you do this, when I work with clients, we talk about this, is put your thoughts, once you've really given it clear thought, into words, and put those words on paper. Because now you have a constant reminder of where you're at mentally. Now, we're going to get into a little bit later in the conversation, something that's really important to understand about purpose and passion. But I want you to start to ask yourself some questions. And I think what Michael just said about the purpose and passion piece is huge. Why we do need purpose and passion, but more importantly, why not make it a mission statement, like organizations and businesses have a mission statement? This is what we seek to accomplish. And here's how we seek to do it. And hence, then they begin to, and hire or enlist people that can help them to achieve that goal. So hence, that noun I talked about in the beginning, that's really what that's what a mission statement is. And then all the initiatives you put in place, your goals, become the action points, the verb that makes your purpose come into fruition and become real. And then you experience it. I love the idea of putting things in writing. I am the person, before I moved, part of what I would do on a regular basis would be write key thoughts I had about things I wanted to work on or epiphanies I had. I would write that on Post-it notes and stick it on my wall. And I had different color Post-it notes because the level of thought was different. So it might be more of an emotional thought. This may be more of a professional thought. This may be more of a spirituality link. I actually had like 4 different colors I had working, and I would put them up there. And the thing is, I would shuffle them as I thought I had navigated through it. Because here's what's interesting. In regards to learning, I am a visual and a tactile person. I also like to hear things, but my key thing is that visually I like to see things. So hence, I'm okay with e-learning. I always preferred brick and mortar being in the classroom because I like to engage in conversation. But here's one thing, I can be flexible with anything. But the one thing I never really cared for was digital or electronic books. And tons of people did it. Anytime I had the option to order an actual physical book for my class, I did, because I am tactile. I love the idea of turning the pages and reading the words on the page. I came to understand that that was important for me as a learner. So it's always important to understand how you have to manifest what your purpose is and the tools that you need to do it. So I believe having a mission statement for your life is a fantastic idea. Just make sure it's your mission and not somebody else's. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Michael Carson. Like him as well. You can share your comments in the show, YouTube, Facebook. Just type in the comment section and voila, I can click a button and they will magically appear on the screen. So ask yourself a question. Why did you choose the purpose you may have if you've identified it? So some things that people tend to really ruminate on is their career. Why did you choose the career you have? Let's be honest. One of the reasons I really want to do my college coaching plan that I'm working on, that I'm trying to launch in July, is that when we're 18 and someone sends us forth into the world, we may have ideas of what we think we want to do, but half the time you take a class and you realize, or you do an internship and you go, oh, this is really not me. It's not what I thought. More importantly, I can't tell you the amount of times I've actually done career days and I listen to kids and I love hearing people's dreams. I want to be a musician. I want to be this. And they're the most untangible, they're not going to make money. They may be happy, but they're going to be broke as all get out. And I listen and I always say, have you researched how much a musician or a artist or even a teacher makes? And they tend to look at me blankly because at that point, mom and dad have been, footing the bills. They weren't thinking about money. I said, when you choose a career, it's important to think about, can it support you financially? It may help you to live a dream or a goal, which I'm not telling you to extinguish, but it also needs to be financially viable so that you're not broke or starving. I said, now, maybe you should think about if there's different ways you can do what you can enjoy, but still make it lucrative, or maybe you need a double major. I've said that multiple times in career days. And most kids are like, oh my God, no, deer in the headlights. You hadn't thought about it, but most parents will send their children forth into school and allow them to major in things that will not allow them to make money, and they wonder why they're coming back home. Because most parents are just excited their kids are in college. We got to get past that. We have to make sure that if your kid's going to get this huge financial burden, if you're not footing the bill for them, that they're making smart choices so that when they get out of college, they can actually get a job. There's no point of majoring in something if there's no job. My college coaching plan is coming in July, and I'm super excited because these are the conversations that people need to have with their young adults, not their children, when they set forth into the world and go to college. One of the best and next experiences they're about to have. So ask yourself a question. Why did you choose a career? Was it because you thought you would love it? Was you saw someone else doing it? Right now, we know the music business is huge, or fashion, because we see all the success. Doesn't mean it's going to be success for everybody. Some people fall into careers. They major in, how many people majored in one thing and are working in something entirely different? Often, some people ask questions like, why did I get married? Why am I divorced? Why did I have kids? I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just being honest about when you did some of these things. Let's be honest, some of these things we fall into, like for people who had children, a majority of people don't necessarily plan to have children. It sort of, they pop up accidentally, or I don't know. People act like they don't know how they got here, which is okay because we all know how they got here. But it's often not planned for, which is not good or bad. You just have to make the adjustment once you've kind of made that long-term, lifetime commitment, so to speak. But it doesn't mean that you can't reflect on the choice and how you move forward once it is now there, because once you decide to procreate and have a child, you are now a parent, and you better be a parent with purpose and figure out, okay, so I'm about to have a child. Am I trying to rear them the way that I was raised? What does my significant other think about this? What's our purpose and how we're going to raise our child? Most people don't consider these things. They just kind of go through the motions, and it's not good or bad. I'm just saying it's worth thinking about in today's world, because I think today's world has come to be very complicated for young adults. Seriously, depression, anxiety, just a lot of things are going on. And if we did things with understanding more purpose, we might do things differently, because we'd start having the internal conversations about God's plan, the master plan, or no plan. It's really important to take these things into consideration. Michael Carson, weighs in again and says, admittedly, I spent years exploring my passion, but someone else's vision. Yes, we're getting there. I struggled sometimes with thinking I wasted a number of years because that time could have been spent on my vision. I fell into my career. You know something? I'm kind of living, and you just said something that's about to come up in the conversation a little bit down the road, because we're coming towards the end of the show and it's there. We're going to talk about this. A lot of times we do fall into things, which is not a bad thing, as long as you've come to enjoy it and it's been fulfilling for you in some way. Sometimes the best thing that ever happened to us are the things that we least expect. So that's okay. And that's the thing I would prompt you as I'm talking about, thinking about why we choose to do the things we do. The word I want you to keep in the front of your mind is circumstance. Circumstance is a big word in self-reflection. So it's like, am I doing this because, just like you said, it was my vision, it was what I felt was my master plan? Or am I doing it because someone else set this forth in front of me, or it's God's plan and I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing, even though I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to go with it because it seems like the right thing to do. Vision. Vision is key. And a lot of people, honestly, Michael, thank you for weighing in, don't even think about the idea of having personal vision. We are the most amazing creatures ever created. And I always tell people, at the beginning of your life, you are someone else's project. Once you hit a certain age, you become the architect of your present and your future. And what you decide to build is totally incumbent on you. And if you don't like your building materials, or you're not exactly comfortable or not liking the structure that you're currently in, you have so many tools at your disposal to be able to change that narrative. It's key. But vision is having the insight to know it's not it. He said he fell into his career, but it's been fulfilling. Thank you for sharing. And that's good to hear, because some of the best opportunities that are presented to us, like I said, my mother put me in dance and I was not interested, but it's a passion for me. And I'm glad that I had that experience, because it showed me something that maybe I would have never have known. I think maybe I would have stumbled into it at some point, but I learned it early. And I totally love it. And it's something that's so therapeutic for me. So yes, sometimes opportunities can drop in our laps that we don't know anything about, but that doesn't make it bad. But I always want you to think about your circumstance when you think about purpose. So is your circumstance and your current purpose the reason you're doing something? Is the circumstance because it's something you have created, or has someone else created it for you and you're just kind of following along with it? So purpose actually has a lifespan. So we're kind of getting to what Michael spoke about in his comment. And someone's like, really? Yes. Purpose grows and it changes with you as a person, because who you are at 10, you're not at 20, you're not at 30, you're not at 40. But at the core of who you are should always be consistent. But we grow and we change and we navigate our waters. And we make those modifications as we have new experiences that help us to grow. Now, mind you, it's not that clear and simple, because a lot of people have to navigate some rough waters and their direction is not always the same. And I'm aware of that. So I'm speaking more in a context, if you aren't maybe riddled with trauma or a lot of issues in your life, then this is an easier journey. If you're not, that's okay too, because we can still navigate those waters, because everybody needs a companion to help them with that. That's why therapy can be so good, and why I always tell people don't be afraid of it, because it's not about mental illness, it's about mental wellness, which is the thing that will help you to navigate rough waters. But purpose has a lifespan. And this is kind of a M.A.Y.A.ology, so to speak. I guess I should now create a segment, M.A.Y.A.ology. I say that there's short-term and there's long-term purpose. Short-term purpose is maybe a current endeavor that is a stepping stone to what you truly desire. So for instance, say a person wants to be an on-air personality. Nowadays, there's so many options of how you can do this. But let's say you want to work for a major, like let's say production house or station. You may have to start at a news desk. You may have to start behind the camera before you can get in front of the camera. So that initial first purpose, the goal that you have set in front of you, the action you're there are doing things that are going to help you to put the stepping stones to get there. It's interesting. So jobs are like that. You may do volunteer work because you're passionate about it, but ultimately you need to get paid for your endeavors, but it's giving you the experience that you need to be able to do the thing that you truly desire. And that's the key point. So, a job volunteering, oddly enough, I'm going to say something and I'm going to make some people cringe because it's a dangerous prospect, but it's true. Often relationships can have short-term purpose. They always say you meet people for a reason or a season. I don't know who said that, but I always loved it. Along the way, I've had some amazing friendships with people that didn't last for long periods of time, but those people really impacted my life in a meaningful way. It was a short-term thing, but the purpose and what I gained from them was amazing. On the flip side, I had people sometimes who were for the long term and it wasn't all that great for me, but they did still serve a purpose. If you look for the meaning in something, you can find it, opposed to saying, woe is me, this isn't fair. No. We don't have time for self-pity. We don't. I'll allow you to be petty occasionally, but we're not going to wallow in self-pity. So sometimes short-term relationships can really help you to learn a lot about yourself. So can long-term ones. But the short-term ones, oddly enough, hopefully can be the thing that will help you to build better long-term relationships and to truly get to where you desire. Because on the flip side, that's what long-term purpose is. Long-term purpose is where you're at, is where you want to be. And you feel fulfilled in the situation or circumstance that you're in. Now, some people are in long-term situations that are not good for purpose, and they don't have the vision, as Michael mentioned, or haven't put a mission statement together about their life to know they're kind of spinning their wheels, and the reason maybe they feel stuck or unfulfilled, or here, for instance, jobs are classic for this. You have a job, you're making money, but ultimately, you're not happy. You're accomplished, though. You got the title, you got the pay, you got the respect, but at the core of it, you're not excited about what you do. You feel like you're supposed to do something else. I love when people have career changes and they make that leap of faith that what they need to really feel fulfilled is more important than trying to meet expectations or kind of trying to maintain something that doesn't have value, bring happiness, fulfillment, or pleasure. Because that's what purpose is all about. So just know you may be embarking upon something initially that's about short-term purpose. It's a building block to get you to what your long-term purpose is. It's a roadmap. It's a stepping stone. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you already know these are action-oriented. So you see the purpose of what you're supposed to be doing within that short-term purpose, so to speak. So just know, mind you, this is a M.A.Y.A about short-term and long-term purpose. There's no school of thought that says this. Let's jump into our second real talk time, because I think it's important to kind of dive into some things that are important. Real talk time 2. If your current life trajectory is it by your design or primarily past experiences, expectations, or imprint or familiar behaviors? This is probably one of the most important parts of the conversation that people never really think about. And Michael Carson, I'm like, oh, he's ahead of the conversation, but he's nailing it on the head because I think he's already given this thought. If the path that you're on, aka your trajectory, is it a choice that you have made? Or has it been past experience that maybe that drove you or moved you down this path? Or do you do things with expectations? One of the biggest things that I had to really acknowledge and I have to constantly work on, because it's mentally and emotionally deconstructing a behavior that I have, is that there were plenty of things I did in my life based on expectation. And part of that issue was the burden it put on me that I couldn't be a failure, that just to be average actually wasn't good enough. And it's interesting. And when I say this, this is not any scathing indictment of parenting, because I had an amazing childhood. I was nurtured. But to a degree, it created some conflicts for me in my adult life because I really felt I was special. Well, I was special to my mother, but I wasn't special like special. I really thought I was, I can't do that. I'm expected to do this. That's basic. I got to be up here. I can't be down here. And I spent my entire life always feeling the need to overachieve and mentally and emotionally burning myself out. And I've had to work as an adult. I've had to work as a counselor to deconstruct the idea that it's okay to not always be strong. Everybody has a moment when they're weak. You don't have to be, I don't believe in perfection. So it wasn't so much that I was striving for perfection as much as I was striving for being overly contentious, so to speak, being exceptional. I was never trying to be perfect because I'm way too goofy for perfect. I'm going to tell you that right now. But I was always striving for being exceptional. And the thing is, I totally worked into the narrative because I think of how a lot of people think of me like, oh, M.A.Y.A, M.A.Y.A knows this. I'm respected by a lot of people, and I take pride in that. But that pride comes with a certain amount of burden because I feel like there's no room for imperfection, or I can't have a weakness, or I can't do something wrong. And I've made some grave mistakes and really have dug some holes for myself emotionally because I felt like I was on this emotional island of, okay, everyone expects for M.A.Y.A to be this way. I'm saying that as a counselor, the work I had to do to say, hey, I'm about to mess up. And then I went on a whole spiral of mess ups. And the sad thing is I kind of enjoyed it. It was nothing detrimental, by the way. Just want to say that. But I enjoyed my mess ups and I enjoyed letting my hair down and be like, you know what? I've always wanted to do that. And it didn't matter what somebody else thought about it because it's what I wanted to do. I don't have to appease you anymore. So be careful, especially when you have young adults, the expectations and the narratives you give to them, because it can really be damaging if they feel like I have to meet my mom and dad's expectation. And then they start tabling what their goals and their desires are because they're still trying to live up here when they have a right to be building their way to get up there, not just because they were placed there because of initial early success in life that had a lot of support. It's different. Michael Carson weighs in again. I'm loving this. I love when I interact with the show. Like Michael, just go ahead and post your comments in Facebook and YouTube, and I can share them on the screen. For me, it's been both a path that I chose and a path that circumstance drove. I'm looking to go another direction, but it's a struggle. Yeah. When you decide to shift your trajectory on things, it can be difficult, but I'm going to tell you something. If it's something you truly want to do and you have passion about it, it's possible. But remember, I said there's clearly like short-term and long-term purpose. It might be a struggle, but the question then becomes, why is it a struggle? Pull it apart, compartmentalize it a little bit. I'm a big compartmentalizer, and figure out, where do I struggle? What skill sets or what do I have to make this happen? And what do I need to build to make the rest of that shift happen? Nothing has to happen in one sweeping shift. We tend to believe that in our lives, that I have to do something off the bat. It has to be right. No. Sometimes your successes should be incremental. It's the little things that kill. Song by Bush, the band, not former presidents. Seriously, it's a building block. And if we stop trying to do things in large chunks and work in small units and write it down and check off when you're achieving it, you'll find you'll achieve that that shift you're looking to have can happen. And it might be difficult because sometimes it's about unlearning some behaviors that you've had in place that, let's be honest, they're like rooted in, you're used to it. But you can do it. It's just your approach. And I like the fact, if you're willing to put a mission statement in there for your life, whatever it is you're looking to make that shift, create a purpose and a mission for that purpose, why you want to do it and how you can do it, and figure out what tools you have. And that's what makes things so much more manageable when you take on big paths altogether. So think about your current trajectory. Is it past experiences, those circumstances, expectations that have driven you, and imprints of familiar behaviors? Sometimes we just emulate what we see people in our family do. And it's often, I'm not saying it's bad, but the question is it you? Just because it's something that your family has always done doesn't mean it aligns with the core of who you are or what you have a passion about. And a lot of people struggle, especially when they have very tight families, with straying from the expectations or familiar behaviors because, well, this is what everybody does. All of a sudden, words like black sheep start popping up. Here we go, yo. Here we go. It's okay. Because if you're finding value in that shift you're making and it brings happiness, it brings fulfillment and pleasure, it's okay if you're living outside the lines and if you happen to be the black sheep. But that's a comfortability people have to grow into. So if you are trying to rediscover your purpose or passion or discover it, let's talk about some things you can do. Because part of the conversation that I had recently with someone is, because her life was so by design, she actually doesn't know what her purpose and passion is, but she does feel fulfilled. I mean, not fulfilled, but she feels accomplished, but she feels like something is missing. But as it stands as being a successful person, here's that underbelly I talked about. She's like, I don't even know if what I'm doing is what I really want to do and or meant to do, but I'm doing something. That's the interesting underbelly of success. Does it resonate with what you really want to do? Does it make you happy? If success is happening and it looks good, but it doesn't feel good, what's the purpose of having it? But then again, it's better to have it than not have it, right? Okay. So ways that you can discover or rediscover purpose or passion. One, is there something you already love doing? A lot of times we love doing things that don't yield benefit. If I could dance, I was about to say, if I could dance for a living, I probably would do it. And I just thought about, well, I could, but ain't nobody trying to look at that. So with that being, I'm sorry. See, I'm a dork. I laugh at myself. With that being said, but I have all kinds of passions like, sports and travel. And little by little, I'm going to start incorporating these things into what I do. And there's actually ways to make money, because with blogging and podcasting, there's so much opportunity to have passion that you can share with people. Luckily for me, I happen to have the gift of gab, so I can kind of do this. But discover what it is that you literally, love. They said, if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life, versus if you don't, then you feel like it's work. We can't always do that. But I kind of feel as we get through our life journey, can we start to incorporate those things into our lives that we love in some way? It's important to have that sense of fulfillment. Two, Find out what you spend your time watching, reading, or researching. So, for instance, I know it makes sense that I would do sports and other things and travel because it's something I spend time paying attention to, places I want to go. I watch a lot of sports. So I know I'm aligning myself with things that I legitimately have an interest in. If you happen to love political things, you always find you're reading political, articles or watching the news. Maybe you need to think about trying to get involved in more political based things in your community. Start simple and grow. That's a passion. And a lot of times, the things you're most passionate about, it doesn't pay, but it doesn't mean you should abandon it because most fulfillment doesn't have a price tag. 3, randomly try something new. Step out of your comfort zone, aka world you know. I know a person who loves to travel, and there's a part right now in her life where she has no one to travel with. I said, well, why can't you go by yourself? One of the most challenging and best experiences I had years ago is I wanted to go to a Bears game. It was in Minnesota, and I had no one to go. I bought the ticket for myself, went to Minnesota, had a ball at the game, ended up meeting people in Minnesota. Hence, this was during the time I was actually sort of a Vikings fan, so to speak. I broke up with them this year, but ended up meeting people in Minnesota. So when I decided to go back to games, I now met people. It challenges me to step outside the fact that you don't always have to know somebody when you go someplace. So I was like, if you want to go someplace, why does someone have to go with you? And I've actually taken other trips where not a soul has gone with me. And those have been some of the best trips that I've had. So don't be afraid to step out your comfort zone. Start small though. Maybe it's going to a concert by yourself. Can you go to dinner by yourself and not feel awkward? It's the small things that you can work on that can build to the bigger things. So try something new that you don't know about. Ask yourself this question. What are the people in your circle into? Why are you attracted to them? So if you got a group of friends, do you share things in common? Maybe ask them some things they're in or some things they're passionate or purpose about. Like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Like, what would you say? You might find they may say, I've been struggling with the same thing. And all of a sudden you might be on the purpose journey with somebody that you didn't expect to. But think about it. If I've got a circle of people, and especially in my old age, my circle of people right now are so important to me because I want positive people. I want people that are influential and are living the dream, working their goals, not people who are just thinking about it. Put action-oriented people in your life, and hence then it's a little bit easier for you to become action-oriented because they're emulating a behavior that then you should want to copy and be a part of. And 5, know what motivates you. If money drives you, then so be it. I'm not going to tell you that, it's wrong. No, because if that's the thing that brings you joy, then okay, holla, it's joy. Do it. I'm not mad. Just make sure that's what it is. But if you're a more altruistic person, which means you're less interested in you and you want to work more for other people, you find joy in seeing happiness in others, there's nothing wrong with it as long as you're not honestly neglecting yourself and that truly brings you happiness back. Because being altruistic can be a really important thing through these different stages of our life, so to speak. So figure out what motivates you. Is it money? Is it helping others? Is it just, I want to be a catalyst for change in my community with this particular cause? You have tons of people who have decided, I want to support, the cancer, this information and getting people informed and raising money. Whatever it might be, find the thing that motivates you. And if you find saying yourself, I don't even know what motivates me, Maya, this is a problem. Now we got to go back to square one and figure out, okay, we got some soul searching to do because you don't even know what motivates you. Final thoughts of the show. Be aware and be aware of patterns of behavior that are not connecting with your core values and morals. So if you find you're acting out of yourself, stop doing it. Your core values and morals never really change even as we mature through life. Now, it's interesting. I've worked with people who's like, I can tell you, I don't even know what my core values are because that just wasn't really part of my upbringing. So their first discovery piece is, what do I value? Remember I said value should be placed in this whole conversation with purpose. So what's your value? What morally is important to you? And then when you start to identify those things, you'd be surprised how other things in your life start to fall into place. So be aware when you're doing things that don't align with your core values and moral, and be aware. Similar words, different meanings that can totally change how you really proceed in doing things in your life. These are toolbox pieces, knowing when to be aware and knowing when to be aware. key things. All right, everybody, that's it for episode 44. I've enjoyed this. This was a new segment that was brought to my attention by someone. I've totally enjoyed it. It's called, Maya's Mailbag. This particular episode was Dear Miss Accomplished but Not Feeling Fulfilled. Someone sent me an email saying this couple episodes that resonated with me, and I'm having questions about I'm accomplished, but why am I feeling so unfulfilled? So all of a sudden, here comes a new segment for me called Maya's Mailbag, which you're more than welcome to participate in. You can drop me virtual mail. You can go and send your email to getinspired@MayaAkai.com. And then, of course, I can then, respond, share some things with you, give you some thoughts. And if what you throw at me legitimately is worthy of a segment like I felt this was, then guess what? It's going to become that particular episode that I'm going to share. Of course, you will remain anonymous. I will not share that it was, guess what? Michael Carson, I'm just kidding, sent me a virtual letter about a question that he has, and he thought this would be a good episode. That's something else too. If you're like, hey, I don't know if you've talked about this, but I would love to hear this. So it's Maya's Mailbag. So if there's an episode that's got you thinking, reflecting, or navigating a difficult situation, or if you're feeling stuck, or you're working with trying to get to that best version of yourself, but you're really having some issues, go ahead and send a virtual letter to getinspired@MayaAkai.com. And like I said, I'll respond or I just might make it an episode. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. Michael Carson, thank you for tuning in and kind of being my co-host in this journey, which I think I love when my listeners share their experiences with others. So I always say we tend to thrive when we realize that we're not standing alone. Mental wellness is not an island you stand on alone. We're all there. The question is, how do you see it? Do you feel you're alone, or are you open to, kind of working through things with other people? So thank you. He says, great advice and show. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your insight into your experiences. That's equally as important. All right, everybody. So we got to wrap up the show with our housekeeping things, obviously. As you know by now, you can always find episodes of Maya at MayaAkai.com. Of course, there'll be a couple additional things that will be podcast companions to this episode. So go to MayaAkai.com, click on podcast resource. Right there is episode 44. A couple different things I think that can expand the conversation for you. That's good. Hopefully by now you have subscribed to my YouTube channel. If not, just go to YouTube, search Maya Kai, scroll past all the Japanese anime, and voila, you'll see me there. Click subscribe and share. I appreciate when you share my show with others, because maybe you're not getting something from it today, but somebody else just might get something from it. Of course, I'm not picky. If you happen to have a podcast platform of choice, go ahead. I'm okay with that. Share, like, subscribe. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google, iHeartRadio. I'm on Amazon Audible, Spotify. Pretty much if it's a podcast platform, you can find me there. And remember, make sure you get social with me. You can find me at Maya_Akai at Instagram and Twitter. And you can find me at Maya Akai Presents on Facebook. All right, everybody. As I say every single week, your present is your past and your future is no more. So live every day to the fullest. Be well, be safe, and stay absolutely amazing. Until next time, ciao.
Get inspired, get motivated with Maya Akai and the Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking, thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find Maya on Twitter and Instagram at Maya_Akai. On Facebook at Maya Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything Maya at MayaAkai.com.